Ready for a curveball. Today's deep dive isn't about like some super advanced chess strategy book. We're going deep on, get this, chess fundamentals. Surprised.
Right. It's funny how the most insightful stuff is often hiding in plain sight. We just gotta know where to look.
Totally. You wouldn't think a book called Chess Fundamentals would hold the secrets to, outsmarting a grandmaster. But we're going beyond just like the basic moves. We're trying to understand the strategy, the why behind it all, even if you're like just starting out with chess.
Think of it this way, mastering the fundamentals. It's the foundation. Like you want to build a skyscraper. You gotta start with a strong base, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of building, one thing I thought was kind of interesting was how much the book focuses on pawn endings. There are whole chapters on pawn promotion, pawn endings, getting a pass pawn. I don't know, shouldn't that stuff be like beginner territory?
Hmm?
Not exactly what I'd expect in a deep dive on strategy.
Yeah. Ah, see, that's where most people miss the magic. They underestimate the pawn. Big mistake. What they don't realize is that, especially in the endgame, a passed pawn, it's like a Trojan horse on the board.
Whoa, Trojan horse. Okay, now you're speaking my language. I'm guessing this has something to do with like promoting a pawn to a queen.
Bingo! Imagine, right? You're down to the wire, just a few pieces left on each side. Your opponent, they're distracted, laser focused on your king, maybe. And bam! Out of nowhere, your pawn marches down the board unstoppable and transforms into a queen right under their nose. Game over.
Okay, yeah, that'll change things for sure. So this chess fundamentals book, it's teaching this kind of long-term thinking, even for beginners.
100%. Take the whole idea of holes and controlling the center, for example. Those concepts, they're everywhere in this book, right from the beginning.
Wait, hold on. Back up a sec. Holes in chess. You're losing me. And how do you even control the center of the board?
Okay, think of a chessboard like I don't know, a busy city center. Control the center, you control the flow of everything. Your pieces can move freely, your opponent stuck in traffic, gridlock.
Okay. I think I see what you're getting at. So it's about, what, limiting your opponent's options, even if you're not directly attacking them at that moment.
You got it. And that's where the holes come in. A hole is basically a weak square in your pawn structure, like a vulnerable spot in the defenses of our city center.
So if you control the center and like exploit those holes in your opponent's defenses, you're basically setting yourself up to win, even if it takes a while to like actually happen.
Exactly. Think of it this way, a chess game, it's like a conversation, right? Control the center, you get to steer the direction of that conversation. And avoiding holes, that's making sure your side of the conversation is strong. Makes sense.
That's actually a really good way to put it. And this all ties into the importance of the end game, right? Which chess fundamentals seems kind of obsessed with. There are a lot of chapters on endgame strategy.
Exactly. It's like the book took a page right out of Capablanca's playbook. He always said, most players, sure, they know what to do in the end game, but they don't know how to get to the end game in a good position to begin with.
You're right. That quote's even in the book, page 110. I gotta admit, before we did this deep dive, I always thought end games were kind of, well, boring. Like, all the exciting stuff happens in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah, but that's where the real art of chess comes in. The end game. It's where all those little advantages, the ones you've been carefully building the entire game, finally pay off.
Okay, I see what you mean. But how does chess fundamentals actually teach you about this whole end game thing? It's not just like a bunch of boring theory. Right.
No way. It uses Capablanca's own games as examples, which is awesome. You get to see all these principles in action used by like a legend.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely learning from the best. So can you walk us through one of these Capablanca examples? Show us how he used these simple-sounding principles to, actually win a game.
Absolutely. Let's dive into game number 14, Marshall versus Capablanca. It's Queen's Gambit declined, and Capablanca, like he usually does, he plays this really classic positional game. Patient, moving his pieces around, like, I don't know, a general, sizing up the battlefield, always focused on controlling the important squares and slowly but surely squeezing Marshall's options.
So not exactly an all-out aggressive attack then, more of a like slow burn.
Exactly. Capablanca, he's all about accumulating those small advantages. For example, there's this super sneaky maneuver he pulls off with his knight. He gets it onto this one square, and from there, it's just this constant thorn in Marshall's side.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Like that knight is controlling a major intersection in that city we were talking about earlier. Any piece that tries to get past it is in trouble.
Perfect way to visualize it. And on top of that, Capablanca starts putting pressure on Marshall's pawns over on the queen side. He manages to isolate one of them, turn it into a real liability for Marshall.
So this goes back to those holes we were talking about before. creating weak spots in your opponent's position, even if they don't seem like a big deal right away.
Exactly. Capablanca knew that a weak pawn, especially as you get closer to the endgame, can be the difference between winning and losing.
That's amazing. It's like there's all this hidden depth, even to these, like, simple chess concepts.
That's the beauty of chess, man. Always more to learn, even from the fundamentals.
Seriously, this is eye-opening. We went from chess fundamentals to, like, uncovering the secrets of Capablanca's genius. I'm starting to think maybe I have been underestimating the power of a well-placed pawn all this time.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. We always think about strategy as these big, splashy moves, but sometimes it's about the subtle stuff, like recognizing a small advantage and knowing how to use it, just like Capablanca.
So by the time they get to the end game in this Marshall game,
Yeah.
what's the situation? Is Marshall just, like, totally screwed because of that one weak pawn?
Pretty much, yeah. Capablanca, he's been playing this really smart, consistent game, right? Building up all these tiny advantages. And it all adds up to this position where Marshall is basically suffocating. His pieces are all tangled up. He's got no good moves left. Like, Capablanca's got him in this invisible headlock.
And that's where the end game is where you actually win thing comes into play, right?
Exactly. Marshall, he's got all these weaknesses, and Capablanca, he's a master at exploiting those weaknesses.
Yeah.
Endgame comes around, it's not even close. Capablanca wins, no problem.
Wow, that's some next level chess, man. It's making me realize I need to step up my strategy game, both on and off the board.
That's what I love about chess fundamentals. It connects all these different ideas. We've got pawns, endgames, control in the center, positional play. It seems like they're all separate, but they're not. They all work together, like gears in a machine, right?
Right, yeah. It's like the book doesn't explicitly say it, but once you start putting all the pieces together, it's like, oh, wow, this changes how that works over there.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really interesting thing. The book kind of hints at the danger of a safe position.
The danger of a safe position. Okay, now that just sounds like a contradiction, especially in chess, right? Where, like, the whole point is to keep your king safe. What's so dangerous about playing it safe?
Imagine this. You're playing a game and you've managed to build this super strong position, right? King secure, all your pieces are protected. You're feeling good.
Sounds pretty good to me. What's the problem?
The problem is you can get passive. You get so focused on defending that you stop looking for opportunities to attack, to actually win the game. Remember our city center analogy from before? If you just hunker down in your fortress and never come out, you can't influence what happens in the city. You're at the mercy of your opponent.
Okay, so even if your position is technically safe, if you're not actively trying to make it better or take advantage of your opponent's mistakes, you're basically giving them the advantage.
100%. In chess, just like in life, sometimes the most dangerous position you can be in is the one that feels the safest. Real security. It comes from finding a balance between defense and, taking smart risks.
Wow, that's a powerful idea. Good reminder that even when we're comfortable, we got to keep pushing ourselves, keep looking for ways to grow and improve.
Exactly. And chess fundamentals, even though it's called that, it really does encourage you to think that way. Look beyond the immediate threats and think about the bigger picture. Not just in chess, in life too.
Man, this deep dive is blowing my mind. But before we get too philosophical here, I'm curious to see more of how all this actually plays out in Capablanca's games. You said he was this master of positional play. Can you give us another example, something concrete that really shows his genius?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at another game from the book Game 23, Capablanca versus Tartakower, 1920. This one is a perfect illustration of how powerful a single well-timed pawn move can be.
A single pawn move? Seriously, that seems way too simple.
That was Capablanca's style, though. He could take something totally ordinary, like a simple pawn move, and turn it into something game-changing.
Okay, you got to tell me more about this pawn move. How does Capablanca pull off a win with, like, just a pawn?
All right, so picture this. It's a super tense middle game. Pieces everywhere, like a chessboard battlefield. Capablanca, being the patient genius he is, he just pushes this little pawn forward on the queen side. Nothing fancy.
Wait, the queen side? That's usually, like, the quiet side of the board, right?
Yeah.
Not exactly where you'd expect a big attack to come from.
Exactly. And that's why it's so brilliant. Most players, even the good ones, they wouldn't even think about making that move. But Capablanca, he saw something they didn't. He wasn't going for some flashy attack. He was thinking long term. He realized that pawn move would create a weakness in Tartakower's position that he could exploit later on.
So it's like that pawn was like a secret agent or something, just blending in, waiting for the right time to make its move.
Perfect analogy. and make its move, it did, that little pawn, it ends up totally messing up Tartakower's position. It blocks in his pieces, weakens his pawns, the whole deal. And in the end, that's what allows Capablanca to win the game.
That's insane. You're telling me understanding chess strategy can turn like a simple pawn move into something amazing. It's like finding a diamond in the rough.
That's it. That's what Chess Fundamentals does so well. It shows you the beauty hidden in the game. The real mastery isn't about memorizing a bunch of openings or tricks. It's about understanding the logic behind it all.
And the crazy thing is, that logic, that strategic thinking, it applies to way more than just chess.
Absolutely. Think about it. Making decisions in your business, figuring out relationships, even just trying to understand the world around you, all those
Yeah.
things, they require strategy. And the stuff we've learned from chess fundamentals, like being patient, thinking ahead, understanding how everything connects, those are super valuable skills to have no matter what you're doing.
This has been a wild ride. Who would have thought a book called Chess Fundamentals could be so mind-blowing? We've learned about chess strategy, decision-making, even a little bit about the art of living.
It just goes to show sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places.
So if you're listening to this, next time you're about to dismiss something as basic or too simple, remember this conversation. There might be a whole lot more going on under the surface than you realize. You might even unlock your inner Capablanca and start seeing the world in a whole new way.